Today is October 7th, 2005, and we are at the Warhawk Air Museum conducting a Veterans History Project interview in conjunction with the Library of Congress. Today we will be interviewing Mr. Norman C. Adams. Welcome to the Warhawk Air Museum, sir.
Thank you.
Also present in the room is Mr. Al Musia, who will be doing the filming. Sir, could you please tell us the date that you were born and where you were born?
Born June 6th, 1917, San Bernardino, California.
And could you give us your current address?
1411 Lois Lane, Nampa, Idaho.
And sir, could you tell us which war or wars that you served in the division of your military?
I was in the Army Air Corps during World War II, in the 8th Air Force, and after I stayed in the service and through the Vietnam and Korean War, and served in the 15th Air Force and the 8th Air Force after World War II until I retired in June of 1967.
Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate your coming here to let us do this interview.
Go ahead.
Norm, you were born in 1917 in San Bernardino in California.
Yes.
And what was it like during those early years of the 1900s in that part of the valley?
I always felt that it was the greatest place in the world, but it all changed.
Before smog, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How many people in your family?
I had three brothers. My oldest brother's passed on.
And what did your father do for a living?
That's a good question. He left us when we were very young.
So your mom raised you?
Mm-hmm.
And what did she do for a living?
Believe it or not, she supported 3 growing boys working in a laundry.
Mm. And did you live in the same town all of your growing up years?
When I was in the 5th grade, we moved from San Bernardino to Pomona, California. And there's I did my growing up there.
And did your mom continue to work in the same
Yes.
laundry then?
Yes, after we got to...
Mm-hmm. Did you boys have jobs too?
No, occasionally, but there was the Depression. There weren't many jobs to be found.
What do you remember about the Depression?
Getting hungry.
Were there a lot of people moving into the
Yes.
the valley then?
Yes.
Yeah, they were coming, weren't they, from the Dust Bowl
Mm-hmm.
areas?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So you remember being hungry then?
Yes.
What did you like to do in high school?
The only reason I stayed in school is because I loved to play baseball and football, and that was why I was in school.
So did you graduate from high school?
Yes, and I went on to college.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1936.
1936, and then where did you go to college?
I went to Pomona Junior College, graduated from there, and went to Laverne College and graduated from there.
And what was your interest in college?
Baseball and football.
Any academic interests?
No, I was a very poor student.
But you did play ball then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Where were you and your family on December 7th, 1941?
We were in Pomona. I can remember I was with friends, and we were listening to the radio, I believe, and we heard that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor, and I told my friends then I was going the next day to Marchfield and enlist, which I did.
Had there been any warning? Did anyone have a sense that this was coming to our country?
Not that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was some kind of negotiations going on between the Japanese and our government, but I don't know the outcome or what really went on. But
how old were you then? You were in your early 20s, maybe.
I was 20. 24.
Had you already graduated from college then?
No, I was still in college. It took me a long time to get through college.
The good old GI Bill.
Yeah.
But what about your brothers? Did they also enlist?
Yes, my older brother was in the Navy. My younger brother was also in the Air Corps.
And what did your mom have to say about all this?
And she took it like a trooper. She was a great woman.
Sounds like it. Did you see a radical change in the home front after the attack? I mean, were
Yes.
people really, in what way?
People who you didn't expect to be too patriotic turned very patriotic. And
Had you heard anything about Charles Lindbergh and his sense
yes.
of not wanting our country to go to
oh
war?
no, I didn't. I knew nothing of that.
Just that he was a great aviator,
Yes.
which he was.
Yes.
Did you want to fly as a kid? Did you ever have an interest in airplanes?
The junior college I went to had a program where you could, how do I put it? They were training pilots, put it that way, and you could get into that program, and a lot of my friends did and went on from there into the Air Corps. Why I went in the Air Corps, I didn't want anything to do with the fighting on the ground in the mud and all that.
So it wasn't out of a passion for flying, it was
Not
because
really.
you chose to be in the Air Corps
Yes.
rather than the Army.
Yes.
Yeah. Did your mother say anything about her three boys going to war, leaving to go to war? I mean, she was left alone then at that point, and
Yes. No, she didn't say.
because patriotism was.
Yes.
Did she continue to work through the war years?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you decided to join the Army Air Corps, and where did you do that?
March Air Force Base in Riverside, California.
Were there a lot of young men there
Yes,
enlisting at the
yes.
time?
To get into the cadet program, you had to take a test, and then they gave you a physical, and then they interviewed you, and after the interview, you found out whether you were accepted into the cadet program.
And were you accepted right away?
Yes.
Any of your friends accepted with you?
No. I had friends who were already commissioned and flying in the Air Corps, but when I went in, I was by myself.
What about your brother? When did he enlist?
My younger brother went in the Air Corps, must have been about 2 years after I did.
Okay, so he didn't go in with you.
No.
And so now you're accepted in the Army Air Corps, and tell us about where you went from there.
Okay.
A whole new life.
They scheduled me to go to primary pilot's training in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is just my memory. Seems like about a month after I was enlisted and signed. And in the meantime, the Air Corps changed their policy, and they opened up one of the bases was Santa Ana, California, where all the cadets had to go through there. So instead of going to primary, they sent me to Santa Ana, and I was there for, I don't know, maybe 3 months. And then I went to primary, still at Phoenix, and like a lot of guys, I washed out of pilot training, and I asked, what is the fastest way that I can get a commission? You could either volunteer to go into navigation training or bombardier training. And they said bombardier training is 3 or 4 months shorter. I said, that's for me, so that's what I did. I went from there to in New Mexico at...
So they sent you to New Mexico for the bombardier training?
Yes.
Okay.
And I graduated from bombardier's training on the 30th of December, 42 it would be.
Had you heard about the Norton bomb sight at that point?
I used it all the time.
That's where you
in
were
training.
trained,
Yes,
really?
Yes.
What did you think of it?
It was a super piece of machinery.
Why?
If you learned how to use it, it was almost impossible to miss your target. And well, like when I finished school, I don't know how many bombs you dropped, but now see, I'm brand new at this. Never did it before in my life. Never saw a Norden bomb sight except at school. And my circular error was under 100 feet for all the bombs I dropped. So.
You remember it being a closely guarded,
oh, yes,
secret piece of equipment?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Even in school, you had to personally check the sight out, take it to the airplane, and bring it back and check it back in. Nobody was to help you. It was you alone. You'd sign for it. It was your baby until you brought it back.
Mm-hmm. How long were you in New Mexico then for the training?
Let's see. It took about 7, maybe 8 months, and then I graduated.
And where did you go from there?
Went from there to Tucson, Arizona, to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base.
Is that where you were assigned your group?
I joined they formed crews there, and that's when I joined my B-24 crew. Mm-hmm. And then they sent, after you were put on a crew, they formed training groups that went from Alamogordo, New Mexico to another place in New Mexico. I can't think of the name of it. And then they declared your crew combat ready. And we were sent home supposedly for a 2 weeks leave. Then we went back to Topeka, Kansas, picked up a B-24 as a crew, flew it from there to England.
Were you with other B-24s?
No.
By yourself?
Individually.
Were you ready to go into combat?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Time to go?
Yeah. That's why I joined.
Yeah. What did you do the 2 weeks you were home?
Spent time with my mother.
She knew you were going into combat?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I got married.
Okay.
And
was this a lady that you'd known for a while?
Yes, I'd known her ever since we were little kids, practically. Although we'd never, until just before I went into cadets, we'd dated a few times. And then when I went home on leave, we decided it was a good idea to get married.
And what's her name?
Her name was Geralda Woods. She was from Idaho originally. She grew up in Buell.
Small world.
Yeah.
So off you all went to England by yourself, a sole B-24 with its crew. And where did you land? Can you show us on the map where you actually came into England? It's right up here.
Well, let's see.
And we went by way of what, Greenland?
Yes. Uh-huh. Let me see if I can get... Doesn't show Greenland, does it? Well... let's see if I can find it. I can't find it. Well, first we landed up here by Edinburgh, and there was a base there where they took the new airplanes in and modified them, put more armament and so on. So we left our airplane there and rode on a train down. The first night in England, the train went through London. And I said, I may never get back here again, so I'm going to stay here tonight. So I did. Should have stayed with my crew, but I didn't. I was a non-conformer, I guess. And then our base was, oh, I don't see that little, it was up here. They called this little place here the Wash. Our base was close to it there. I don't see the name of that town here, but. And then when we got there, they said that our group wouldn't be, our crew wouldn't be flying any missions out of England, that we were going to start low-level training.
What does that mean?
That was for that Pulaski raid, is what that meant. We thought that's what it meant, but we weren't sure. But we flew a lot of low-level missions around England, just off of the, well, just above trees, and then they, let's see, it was, I think it was in May.
And we're in this would be 2003 now? I'm sorry, 1943 by now, May
Yes.
of 1943.
43.
Okay.
We went to North Africa, and we flew some missions out of Benghazi up into, we were in the desert there in Benghazi, flew them up into Italy and back. I think our crew flew 4 missions. The most noted one was when we bombed Rome. Where is Rome? Rome's here.
And what were you bombing in Rome?
We bombed the marshalling yards. All the railroads in Italy came through Rome, so we bombed the marshalling yards.
Would you go in with 2 or 3 other airplanes, or with fighter escort, or?
I never saw a fighter escort. No, our whole group flew it, so we'd be, say, 30 aircraft in formation. And
What was it like using the Norden bomb sight the first time in real combat, out of the classroom,
well,
the real thing?
see, that's what's funny about it. You get all this training, then we went over there and flying in formation, and you didn't actually use the bomb sight for what it's made for. You dropped on, when the leader dropped his bombs, you dropped yours. So he was doing the, and our crew was never a lead crew, so.
So you never really used what you learned?
No.
Did you hit a lot of flak? What did you have? You know, if you didn't, did you have fighters attacking you, or any kind of, or was it mostly flak?
We had a lot of flak, and on one mission, I think our crew shot down the first jet aircraft in Europe. I think.
ME-262, was it?
I saw this fighter coming at us, no propeller. I thought, that's a funny airplane. And our top gunner shot him down. I know he did, because I saw him explode. But
that would have been the ME-262. That was the jet.
I don't know what it was.
Yeah. Wow. So you were pretty shocked when you saw that?
Oh, yes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. An airplane with no propeller.
Did it appear to be going pretty fast?
Oh, yes. Yes, it was. A lot faster than you normally saw.
What was it like being in combat? Maybe the first time?
I guess I'm funny, but it really didn't bother me. I always felt that it wouldn't happen, nothing was going to ever happen to our crew. And I guess that kept me from worrying about it. Like a lot of guys went nuts worrying about getting shot down. But
tell us about when you were shot down. Tell us about what happened. You were going into Romania, is that correct?
Yes. I should have brought that book for you, to let you have it here, but it tells about the mission. In the first place, it was well planned.
What was the mission?
bombing the oil fields in Romania at low level. And the first thing that went wrong is when you're flying a bombing mission, you have an initial point where you turn to go to the target. Well, the crew that was leading the mission made the wrong turn. He picked out the wrong initial point. We turned too soon. And we were supposed to bomb from, I think, from the west to the east. And the way where he turned made us bomb from the east to the west.
Can you show us Romania on the map where you were bombing?
Oh, there's Ploesti. I can't find it.
That's the general area.
Well, here's Bucharest. Ploesti's north of Bucharest, up in here somewhere.
Okay. So he turned the wrong direction.
Yeah, see, the initial point was supposed to take us, let's see, we came up here this way, and the initial point was supposed to take us this way at the target. Well, we went clear over to Bucharest, then turned north and then back to the target. And it screwed up the whole mission. But
what happened?
Well, one group, the group behind us, flew the mission as planned. So we're going from the east to the west. They're coming at us from the west to the east. So we're this way over the target. It was not very pleasant.
Was there a name for this mission?
Just, yes, the tidal wave.
And so was there a lot of gunfire going on, or
oh yeah,
flak? And
that wrong turn took us right up a railroad track, about 30 miles of a railroad track, which was probably the most heavily fortified 30 miles in Europe. And we're flying treetop level. They could have thrown rocks at us and hit us. And we got shot up pretty bad. We lost, let's see, we lost the number, B-24 has 4 engine. We lost the number 2 engine. Then we lost the number 4 engine. No, 32 and 3. And there wasn't enough power to keep us airborne. We dropped our bombs and made it out of the target area and crash landed in a cornfield. And luckily, so the safest place supposedly in the B-24 was up on the flight deck where the pilots and the radar operator were. And the nose was the worst place you could be. Well, the navigator and I never got out of the nose. We were in the nose when we hit the ground. But luckily,
what were you thinking?
I thought, this is it. I really did. You know, they talk about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, I saw that light. But luckily...
Was it a glass nose?
Plexiglass.
Plexiglass, so you saw it all from the nose.
Yeah, and we were lucky. They had, I don't know, they had dug a trench across that field and there was a mound of dirt. And when we landed, it was a pretty good crash landing for what had gone on. And before it hit the ground, we hit that mound of dirt. It broke the nose off, and I was in it, and it rolled on ahead of the airplane.
Were you knocked out at all?
Yes. I came to feeling heat, and I thought, this thing's on fire. I've got to get out of here. And then I realized that I wasn't in the airplane. I was just in what was left of the nose. And I got untangled from all the stuff that was in there, got out, and by then the airplane was completely what was left of it was completely engulfed in flame. And I started to run to get away from there. Then I thought, well, somebody else might want to get out of this thing. So I went back and I helped our engineer, helped him out of it and away from the airplane, and I helped one of the gunners who, incidentally, both of them died from burns that first night. So my effort was in vain, but at least I did it. Mm-hmm. And
did the navigator make it through in
no.
the nose with you?
During our flight to the target, I think it was a 20 millimeter shell, came up through, and as far as I can figure, it went between my legs and hit the navigator somewhere in the chest. And he was in bad shape. And I said, David, I can't do anything for you till I drop these bombs. Why don't you try to get up to the flight deck? And I don't think he ever made it. I think he was probably, there's a little kind of a, wasn't a tunnel, it was a hole that you went up through to get to the flight deck from the nose. And I think he was in there when it hit the ground. And so whatever happened, well, I know he got killed. But
what about the pilot and co-pilot?
they both got out. And we got one gunner out. Out of 10 people, 4 of us got out alive.
Any other airplanes in the group go down too?
Oh, yes. Our group sent, let's see. I think our group sent 28 aircraft, and they got 2 back.
Because of the wrong turn.
Well, that's, yeah. I don't know whether anybody will ever admit this, but the wrong turn, that group, the lead group, they didn't even go to the target. They flew around it. Our group flew to the target. That group didn't lose any airplanes. We lost, well, not all shot down, but got back to Benghazi that night were 2 of our aircraft. Some of them were in Bulgaria, some of them were in Turkey. They were all over the place. And there were quite a few of us on the ground, too.
So after you got out of the plane, and the pilot and the co-pilot and one of the gunners, did you all get to stay together?
I did. I thought I was the only one out of the airplane, except the 2 guys I got away from it. And then we landed in this cornfield, and not too far away, I would say, I don't know, it must have been 100, maybe 200 yards away from us was a gun emplacement, German gun. And before I could really do anything for those 2 guys that I got out of the airplane, this German had a bayonet and was pushing me off towards the. So I sat in the gun revetment and watched them shoot at B-24s.
How awful.
Yeah.
Nothing you could do.
And then also shortly after I got into the gun revetment, they brought our little waist gunner. And so I knew there was 2 of us alive. So we sat there. And then when it kind of settled down, they took us to a building. I don't know what building or anything else, but then they assembled all of the guys that survived on the ground. And then I saw my 2 pilots. That's when I.
How many were there? How many survived that raid?
There were 110 of us on the.
Were you wounded?
I
or
had some
injured?
flak in my left leg and in my hands, and I don't know whether it was flak or just smoke or something from that shell that went off in the nose. But my face was all black, and little things for a year kept coming out of my skin. I don't know what it was, and my hands.
So you all, over 110 of you then were detained there
Yes.
in that one spot, and
Yeah.
then what happened?
Okay, they moved us from there, from Ploesti down to Bucharest to a schoolhouse, I think it was. They kept us there for a while, and then they moved us back up into the mountains, in the Carpathian Mountains, to a little town called Timsol de Jus. And they made a prison camp up there, and all 110 of us we kept there until.
Were you the only ones there? Did
Yes.
they didn't bring people
Well,
from other
no.
groups or from Australia or for any prisoners of
there
war?
was 2 civilians from England who had been captured in Germany when the war broke out, and the Germans had detained them. They escaped and got all the way to Romania, and they got caught again, so they stuck them with us. And then was 3 Russians who were, let's see, they were captured when the Germans went into Russia.
Mm-hmm.
These 3 were captured, and why they brought them to Romania, I don't know, but they stuck in our camp, so put them in our camp, and there was one. I think he was a Bulgarian pilot that was in our camp, and that was it.
Did your family know that you were prisoner of war, or for how long before your mother knew?
They got a missing in action wire shortly after the mission, and then it was about 3 months before they knew that I was a POW.
What was your state of mind? I mean, it must have been surreal in the beginning when you first were captured, the plane was gone, and in shock probably, and then.
Again, I knew I was going to get out of there okay, and it didn't bother me. But our co-pilot, he just went out of his mind. He was frantic. But when we finally got loose, he was all right. But he just was a worrier, I guess. But most of the guys in the camp were very good.
What was camp life like? Because that's a small camp. You were in a really small prisoner of war camp. So what was it like? You were there for 14 months. Is that correct? What was your life like?
Where it was in a retirement area for the railroad workers of Romania. Then they took it over and put barbed wire fences and the whole bit around it. And the building itself wasn't bad.
How were you treated?
Good, except the Germans turned us over to the Romanians. So those Romanians were guarding us. And there were more guards than there were prisoners. But we ate the same food that the guards ate, and we got hungry at times. But
did you ever see any American airplanes come over?
Oh yes.
What? Tell us about that.
I can remember we were out in the outside of the building, and we heard this noise that you can't miss. And sure enough, there was, I can't remember whether they were 70s or 24s at high altitude. There was an oil field that was to our east and north of where we were, it was also a target, and that's where they were going. And
how'd you feel when you'd see them fly over?
Great.
You knew that they were still in the war.
Yeah, and they rushed us back into the building. They didn't want us, but that only happened one time.
Were you ever interrogated about the Norden bomb site, or I mean, did they know?
No.
Did they know you were a bombardier and that you had that information?
Yes.
Did you have that knowledge?
Yeah, but they didn't know. What amazed me about the Germans when they interrogated me, they knew my whole life practically. They knew, especially my part of my life that was in the military. They knew where I graduated, when I graduated, what I graduated as, and it was amazing. So their intelligence was probably a lot better than ours.
When it came time, I mean, did you have any sense that the war was coming to an end?
Yes.
That we were winning? How did you, why?
The Romanians, about once a month, they'd bring a barber in if we wanted to get a haircut or whatever. And he smuggled a little radio into camp. And we hid it down in the basement. And we couldn't all go down there, but one or two guys go down and listen to it. And we knew when D-Day happened. And I told him it happened because that's my birthday.
How did you feel on that day, on that D-Day?
Great, because we knew it wouldn't be long then.
Oh, yeah. And tell us about the liberation then of your camp.
Okay, we woke up one morning and no guards. And we thought, this is strange. Then the Romanian captain, who was the commandant of the camp, came and told us that the Germans were pulling out and we were free. And we said, well, yeah, we're free, but what do we do now? And they, like I said, there were more guards than there were prisoners. They were going to move their guards somewhere, and I forget how many trucks they had, but we said, well, we knew there were quite a few prisoners down in Bucharest, the capital, who had been shot down on high-level raids that came after us. And we knew there were more than 110 of them. We figured that our government, if going to do anything for anybody, would be for them because of accessibility and numbers. So we said, we got to get to Bucharest. So we told the Romanians, well, I don't know how many trucks you got, but we're going to take, I think we took 4 to get our 110 guys aboard and headed for Bucharest.
How'd that feel to be free after 14 months?
It was good, but still very apprehensive of what do we do now? And
because no one knew you were there, did they?
No,
the U.S. government didn't know you were
they
there.
Didn't know where we were. That's right. Anyway, we're going down this highway. The German army that's pulling out's going one way, and we're going the other way on the same highway. And then the Romanians, before we got to Bucharest, the Romanians decided they're going to declare war on Germany. So now there's a war going on between where we are and where we want to go. So we stayed, I think we stayed 3 days in a little town. The people took us in and were real great to us. And we stayed there for, I think, 3 days till that war went by us or whatever. So we had clear shot to Bucharest. We got to Bucharest one, I think it was a Sunday afternoon. And the next morning, B-17s from Italy were flown in to take us out of there. So we just made it.
And where did they fly you to?
Back to Italy.
Back to Italy. And then when did you get to come home?
Well, that's another story. There was one character in the camp. He was a ranking officer. He was a major who collaborated with the Romanians and the Germans. And so some way our government knew about it, and
did you know about it when you were in camp?
Yes,
you guys knew it?
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
Not very much.
Did he live among you?
Yes. Anyway, they took the 2 officers, the 2 pilots, myself, and I don't know, must have been 10 other guys back to England from Italy to court-martial, to stand by to testify in a court-martial for this guy.
Was he convicted?
Yes, but he got a slap on the wrist. He was discharged without honor, which is nothing.
No time in jail.
Nothing.
And after that, then were you allowed? Now, did your mom know at this point that you'd been liberated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Had the Red Cross brought anything in? Did the Red Cross even know you all were there? Did they bring anything into you?
We got Red Cross packages one time. But I think maybe There'd been more, but I think the Romanians took them. I'm not sure. This is just my guess.
So from England, you came back to the United States,
Yes.
and where did you come to? Where did they?
Washington, D.C.
How'd that feel when you landed on American
Great,
soil?
great. And they interrogated us quite extensively for a couple of days.
About what? What did they want to know?
What had gone on, and also about this court-martial, and then sent us home. And I was home.
What was that like when you got home?
Oh, great, great. My younger brother was there. He was in cadets in Victorville, California, which is just right close to where we lived, and he was home when I got home.
What about your older brother in the Navy?
He was in the Navy. He was, I don't know where he was. In fact, I didn't see my older brother until after the war.
So this was in 1945, and you decided to stay in the...
Well, yeah.
You were brought home.
I got home for Christmas of '44.
At Christmas at 44.
And then...
And then stayed in the United States then?
Yes, yes. That was one thing about it. Having been a POW, they weren't going to send us to... Wouldn't send us to any... I thought they might send me to, say, to the Pacific, but they just wouldn't. They said no.
Had there been any rumors of this incredible bomb that we had at our...
Yes.
Yeah, what did you heard about that?
Just how awesome it was.
Where were you stationed at this point?
I think it was in Midland, Texas.
Is that where you were when the bomb was dropped?
No, I think I was up in Victorville, California. That was one thing.
Is that where you were when VJ Day?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
during
one
the
good
war.
thing about having been a POW. I could pick where I wanted to be, and
Really?
I wanted to go to March Air Force Base, but there was no place for me, and they sent me up to Victorville, which was all right. I could commute almost if I could get the gasoline.
It wasn't much, was there?
No.
So the home front was pretty patriotic, and
Oh, yes,
you know, a lot
yes,
going on here,
yes,
wasn't
yeah.
there? And you were with your wife then?
Yes.
Yeah, so you all settled in Victorville.
Well, she stayed in Pomona.
Oh, she did. Okay.
But
did you have any children at this point?
no,
Okay.
we never had any children.
Well, then, when the war ended, VJ Day came, and our country, of course, was so ecstatic. The end of the war. What decisions did you make about your life and what you wanted to do at that point?
I'd already decided that I was going to stay in the service. See, I went to college thinking that I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Coach is what I wanted to be. But to be a coach, most of the time then you had to start out as a teacher, but then I decided I don't know what they call it now, but then they called it practice teaching, and that one semester of it made up my mind that I would never be a teacher. I couldn't fight those kids. And so I had already made up my mind that I was going to stay in the service.
How did your wife feel about that?
She's great.
Good.
Yeah, she was a good trooper.
So you stayed in the Air Force then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that when you went into the 15th Air Force, the 22nd Bomb Group? Was that at that
Yes.
point that you were
Yeah, that was-
reassigned to
yes,
that?
yes.
But you stayed as a bombardier. That was still your...
Yes. And then there was the Air Force had a program they called now I can't think what they called. Anyway, what they wanted to do, take all bombardiers that were going to stay in the service to learn navigation and radar operation. So and there was an age limit, and I was approaching that age limit. So they sent me to that school. And then when I got out of that school, I was assigned to Fairchild Air Force Base in Washington, and in B-36s.
Where were you when you saw your first jet? And what did you think of it? And what was it?
Well, the first one I saw, I know, was that fighter that our crew shot down. And
yeah, but then we brought that technology here, and we developed then, of course, the J-33s and the other jets.
Well, out of B-36s, I went into B-52s. I was a navigator in a B-52 crew for quite a while.
And where were you stationed at that point?
I was at Fairchild Air Force Base, went from there to Puerto Rico, still in B-36s. In B-36s in Puerto Rico, we flew airborne alert between there and North Africa, and we carried SAC at that time was probably the biggest deterrent to the Russians, and every crew in SAC had a target assigned in Russia.
Was it a flip over for you? I mean, to go from the Russians being our allies in the first war, and now you're fighting the Russians? I mean, mentally you had to make that flip over.
Yeah, well, we might say we were brainwashed about the Russians. And
so North Africa was your area?
Well, we were airborne alert. We were on alert from the time we took off in Puerto Rico till we landed in North Africa. Then we were on ground alert there, and then took off from there and we were on airborne alert halfway back to Puerto Rico. And we had the big bomb on board.
With the intent to drop it where?
At our assigned target. Every crew in SAC had an assigned target in Russia. And we practiced not the mission, but one that would simulate the mission if the bell rang and we were going to go. So
pretty intense.
Yeah, it was. It got pretty tight at times.
Where were you during the Korean, once Korea became
I was in B-36s in Spokane. And again, I was lucky. See, that was our first line of aircraft in the Air Force was the B-36. And they didn't send them to Korea. And then when Vietnam came along, I was in B-52s in the B-52Gs, which they did not send to. The earlier models, they did go to Vietnam, but the later models, they didn't. So I lucked out again.
How did you sense the change of tide in America of those three wars? World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War against Russia?
Well, I was always amazed that there was not more recognition of what those people had done, which was war is not a happy occurrence. And
but supporting our troops is a very important thing.
That's right.
In World War II, of course, we had such a height of patriotism and togetherness in this country.
That's right.
And Korea, there was kind of a nonchalant attitude.
Like it never happened.
People wanted to have a new life without war, and although there was a great respect for our soldiers.
Oh, yes.
And then Vietnam, of course, the whole country came unglued.
Yeah.
And it was a divisive, negative time.
I think what happened, especially in Vietnam, was like B-52s they sent over there, they were bombing bamboo bridges. Now, come on. You carry 52, you could get 30 bombs aboard to bomb bamboo bridges. Come on. We weren't in it to win. That was my opinion.
Well, we didn't win.
And we bombed Hanoi one time, got their attention, but that was all. That was it.
You were, my gosh, your military history took in the three most significant wars in the history of this country. Which leaders do you think the most highly of those? I mean, because you saw all the great leaders in those three. Did you have any that you stood out in your mind that you thought the most of, or the least of, or what are your? Give us some comments on that.
I met Eisenhower when I got out of prison back to England, and I was tremendously impressed by him.
Why?
He just had something about him that you knew he was a great guy. Just
a good soldier.
Yeah. And then,
what about MacArthur? You never met him?
No.
Or Patton?
No, but he must have been something else. He must have been. And I'm sure that the tales you hear are true. I have talked to and met guys who were in his outfit, and the one thing you didn't want to do was badmouth Patton because they were all over you. And he's to be respected in this, to me anyway. He was from a wealthy family. He never collected a nickel, one nickel as a salary from being in the Army, not one nickel.
What about Claire Chennault? Did you ever hear anything about him?
No, that's the other direction in the war. I never got in that direction.
It didn't trickle down the reputation.
No.
Okay. Now, your wife was able to travel with you. Then she moved to the different parts of the U.S. with you.
Yes.
All right. And when did you decide to retire from the military?
Oh, yeah, it's not a good, nice story, but I worked for a full colonel that I thought was impossible. I would have stayed for 30 years. So I made the lieutenant colonel list, but at that time, the way it worked, you had to stay until, depending on your majority date of rank, you were somewhere on the list because of that date, and you didn't know whether you had to wait 6 months or a year or whatever. And if you put the promotion on and put the silver leaves on, you were obligated for 2 more years in the service. By then, see, I had 26 and a half years, and working for excuse my language, a complete idiot. And I just made up my mind, I got to get out of here before I do something that's not.
How long were you working under him?
A year and a half.
And that's what made you decide to retire?
Yes. Yep.
So you put in for your retirement?
Yes.
And you retired you were
I was a major
when you retired?
Yes.
All right. And where were you based when you retired?
In northern Maine.
Wow.
Loring Air Force Base. The end of the world.
And what did you and your wife decide that you wanted to do once you retired?
Well, I knew what I wanted to do, and she would go along with anything I wanted to do. Of course, I would, if she wanted to do something, she could do it. But I always liked golf was a disease. Hunting and fishing came very close. And I had come, when I was in Spokane, I'd come down there and visited her cousin.
In Idaho?
In Idaho. And gone pheasant hunting with him. And I made up my mind, that's a long time ago, I made up my mind, this is where I wanted to retire. It was in Idaho. And my wife said that she didn't really want to come back to Idaho, but she said, as long as we're going to retire in Idaho, it's going to be Nampa, because that's where my cousin and my aunt and uncle live in Emmett, so at least I'll know someone. And I said, fine with me, and so that's how I got
What
here.
year did you move here?
1968.
And did you stay retired then?
Oh, yes.
And you fished and hunted and played golf?
That's all I've done since I got out of the service, until I had the stroke, and now I don't do anything. Right after I retired, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, and she died about 4 months later. And then we had moved to Nampa, and then when she got sick, I took her back to California, and they took her to the Naval Hospital, and that's where she was diagnosed with cancer, and then died shortly thereafter. So I came back to Nampa, and I had been to a dentist here in Nampa, and had talked to his receptionist several times, and I don't know how the subject came up, but I told her that my wife had died, and she said, "I have a real good friend. I think you should meet." And I wanted to know why, and she told me that she had lost her mate, and that maybe we'd be good for each other, and I didn't know whether that was a good idea or not. I kind of kicked it around and kept telling her, "I don't think so, I don't think so." And finally, the next time I went in, she brought the subject up again, and so I said, "Okay, I'll meet her." So I met Wilma, and about a year and a half later, we were married.
And
I married a family. We had, my first wife and I had no children. Wilma had 4, and she wasn't too sure whether I could handle 4 kids or not, but I immediately liked all of them, and especially her. And we've gotten along great. And right at first, the 2 youngest weren't too sure about this new dad, but the 2 oldest ones accepted me right off. We're great. And then eventually, the 2 young ones came around, and we've been a great family ever since.
And you have grandchildren?
We have 10 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren.
So you have a big family.
A great family.
It's a blessing you survived the nose of that B-24 knocked off, and that you walked away from that so you could have this experience in your life with this family. The Norden bomb site was one of the most highly classified secrets of World War II, and you had the opportunity to train on it and then to use it. Could you tell us what was so special about this bomb site?
What was special about it? Well, the first thing, if you knew how to use it, there was no way you could ever really miss your target if you knew how to use it and used it properly. Plus, it helped in navigation because it would give the navigator wind and drift readings that he needs for his navigation.
Did the navigator in the plane use it also then?
No,
or did the bombardier give him the information?
Yes. The bombardier gave him the information he needed off of it.
Tell us a little bit about your training. How were you trained to use it?
Well, first, when you first went to, we said bomb aimer school, they put you on a trainer, which amounted to kind of a scaffolding on wheels. You sat in it with the bomb sight. Oh, I knocked that. Okay, the bomb sight was mounted on scaffolding on wheels, and on the floor they had, the school I went to, they had pennies on the floor that you use it as a target. And your instructor was sitting with you and explaining what to do, how to use the sight. And my instructor was, I thought, super, because he he taught me things that weren't really in the book, how to use it. And the knobs on it kills your ground speed and wind direction, which causes drift. You kill that. It relays it to the autopilot, and it corrects the aircraft to fly where this thing tells you to fly.
You actually hook the airplane up to this to this Norden bomb sight.
Yes.
Then at some point the plane is turned over to the
you're flying the
person.
airplane. On the bomb run, you're flying the airplane with the bomb sight.
How far out from the target is the plane turned over to you?
Oh, depending on the target. There's a thing on this that they call extended vision. You can run the telescope out to where you can see, maybe 40 miles.
Jeez.
And then at 40 miles, all you're doing is making sure you're killing all the drift so that you're on track to the target. And then at a certain point, the crosshairs will get to the target. Then you clutch them in, and then with a couple other knobs, you kill the ground speed, which that information goes into the bomb sight and tells it when to drop the bombs. And
it's not computer driven.
No.
Because we didn't have computers then.
No. It's all inside of that thing.
You know, there's been rumor forever actually, I've always heard this, that the crosshair in one of the secrets of the Norden bomb sight is the crosshair is from a spider web. Is that true?
That's what we were told. So I guess it's true.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So did you feel, when you went into combat, pretty good knowing you had this incredible piece of equipment?
Yes.
Were you told that the Germans wanted them? Or
yes. Yes. They had nothing that would compare to this. Well, and as far as that goes, the Germans missed the boat anyway. They didn't have any heavy bombardment.
What kind of security surrounded the Norden bomb sites, both on the bases and once they were in the airplanes?
On the base, they were in a safe, always. And when you were going to use it, this in training and also in combat, the bombardier checked it out, signed for it, took it to the aircraft, installed the head of it. This section here was always in the airplane, but the secret part is the top of the bomb sight. Something real interesting, there's gyroscopes in the head and in the stabilizer. I forget the RPMs, but it's unreal how fast those gyroscopes are turning. In fact, if you took the head off of the stabilizer before that thing slowed down, it would almost throw you on the ground. The torque from the little gyroscope. Well, you can see it in there. That knob on top is what cages the gyroscope. In other words, it's got a stem sticks up and that fits over it so the gyroscope won't tumble in all directions.
Did you set it before you left?
Yes.
Knowing what your coordinates were, you would set it before you took off?
Well, now this has nothing to do with where you are.
Right.
What you had to know was what altitude you were going to be flying at and what airspeed you were going to be flying at. That's all the bombardier need to know. And you went into some charts that told you airspeed and altitude, told you where to set your disk speed, which converted into ground speed after you used the sight.
What happened to yours when you all crashed?
On that mission, we didn't have one
Commander.
on board. So you were flying low level, which you could use this. You could use it at low level, but it wasn't that efficient at low level. It was strictly a high level piece of equipment. This shows the approach to the target of B-24s. This smoke, they had smoke towers all the way around that target, so that would make the visibility poor, so you couldn't see where your target was. And let's see, here's another picture of it. It can show you, see how low we were. See these towers? Those are the cracking plants that produced Hitler's high octane gasoline. That's what we were bombing, not the oil field itself. The refineries is what we were after.
So is this actually, are these pictures of where you were?
Yeah, these are that's an actual picture. That's an actual picture.
And that's of your group.
Well, I don't know if it's our group. This here makes me think that was in fact, I know it was the 98th bomb group, which was stationed in North Africa. He was the commander of the 98th. Killer Kane, quite a guy.
That's quite an airplane, the B-24.
That got no recognition. I don't know what else to say
That's
about
great.
that.
That's great. Did you? Well, my gosh, I have to say to you that this has been an incredible interview. The life that you've had is incredible. You know, from coming from a single-parent family environment with a mom who worked her heart out, and you obviously loved and respected tremendously, and then the greatest war that this world has ever known happened, and you went into that and served so valiantly in the Army Air Corps and became a prisoner of war, survived that. I mean, you know, obviously you were meant to live a long life, because it's almost a miracle you survived what you did.
You know, that's
and
long life. That's something that I've said for a long time. When I was in high school, if somebody had told me I lived to be 88 years old, I'd say you got a screw loose.
And I'll tell you, you
look
like you're 70, so whatever you're doing well. And then you had a long, distinguished career in the military, and I want to tell you that we're so proud to have you here, and want to thank you so much for being an American veteran. This country is what it is today because of men like you, and we value so much who you